I've been often troubled in the past by a sense of frustration resulting from negative interactions with individuals over the topic of resource-based economies. The frustration isn't caused by not being able to convince an individual of the necessity of transitioning to a resource-based economy, or even that the resource-based economy is valid as a concept. This frustration occurs, rather, when I explicate the differences innate between a resource-based economy and a monetary society, and the individual simply doesn't comprehend how it's possible to abandon money, let alone live in a society that does not accommodate the use of contemporary forms of ownership or property. I feel that the miscommunication stems from a lack of imagination. I'm not trying to say that my ideological opponents lack an imagination, but that there is either a refusal to take the time to imagine how an RBE would function, or it is my fault for not adequately exciting their imagination. I have developed a mental exercise I hope is useful. First, we must remember that abstractions are not actually real. In fact, though useful as heuristic constructs, that is, mental mappings and conceptualizations of the reality in which we find ourselves, they are by definition no more than mere descriptions of mental phenomenon. Consider math. Does it exist, or is it a perceived quality, an abstraction with no actual impact in reality beyond within our minds? Surely, math seems real. So many mathematical patterns are clearly evident in the world about us. However, consider a red apple. Although we have cleverly devised a series of methods by which we can categorically define an object and identify it as an apple, and in this case declare that the object has the quality of being the color we identify as red, it is in fact not red. It merely reflects those wavelengths of light we perceive as red. The apple is actually no color at all. It merely exhibits qualities that allow us to draw a subjective relationship to this object. For it isn't actually an apple, because apple is a concept. In fact, even the matter it's made out of is a hallucination of our minds to a great extent, because we don't actually understand what anything is. All our definitions are simple descriptions of the relationships of things. That's not to say that there is no object before you, but instead to show you why what we assume is so pivotal. Now an apple to you in this moment is not just an apple, but a mysterious object with almost magical properties. For many, this is the first time they've ever thought of an apple in this way. The assumptions are now tentatively held. Our abstractions have been unsettled. The apple appears much altered, and yet the apple has not actually changed. Now consider money, and property, and ownership. These are useful abstractions, but they're certainly illusions just the same. The question is, are these the most optimal abstractions we can use to define our relationship to reality? I would posit not. If we rid ourselves of money and property and ownership in the traditional sense, nothing actually changes except for our relationship to reality. I think this would be for the better. When we reach the point of detaching these concepts from our perceptions of our natural environment, we can more clearly imagine how a society might function without such concepts. Where there was once a very real incentive for theft, abuse, neglect, manipulation, and corruption for the relatively quick acquisition of monetary wealth and thus market potential and prestige, there is now none. Where there was once a very real inequity between the quality of lives of individuals based on the acquisition of land and natural resource, thus providing yet another very real incentive for theft, abuse, neglect, manipulation, and corruption, there is now none. And where there was once a necessity for the safeguarding of material objects owned, thus providing an incentive for distrust, suspicion, accusation, and fear, there is none. So, what would life in a resource-based economy be like? I invite you to learn more and to imagine.